everybody, I'm Stacy.
And I'm her daughter, Mickey.
And welcome to KiddieNomics! Yay! Another fun-filled Friday of kids' financial literacy with KiddieNomics. We have an uber special guest today. But before we get started with Miss Jackie, I would like to start by sharing my screen as usual. So hang on 1 second. There we go. All righty, there we go. All right, welcome everybody to another Friday of KiddieNomics. We'd like to always, as usual, welcome all the new kiddies that have signed up today or have registered recently. If this is your first KiddieNomics, welcome. And I'm sure the kids will welcome you on in the chat box. And of course, we'd always like to thank all of the returning kiddies that are here week after week. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining. So what is KiddieNomics, right? Like, why are you here today? So KiddieNomics, it will help kids ages 8+ to develop a healthy relationship towards financial literacy, helping to start kids off on the right path to have a successful financial future. That's what we want for you. And that is what I want for this little one, my daughter, and that's what we want for you. So we're here each week and we talk about a different aspect of financial literacy. And this week we're going to talk about book writing for kids with Miss Jackie Brown. No relation, by the way. My last name is Brown too. And Miss Jackie Brown, her last name is Brown, but no relation. But before we get to Miss Jackie, I would just like to do some housekeeping items, okay? So first, let's start off by just letting you know that we try to maintain a very safe community here on KiddieNomics. So we just always want to make sure that we cannot see or hear you kiddies, right? So the only way for you to communicate is in the chat box down below, right? If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to, you can raise your hand, but just ask the question in the chat box. I monitor the chat box as time goes, as we're into the webinar. And so I will ask the questions for you. So that would be great. If you do want to raise your hand, that's fine, but just put the question in the chat box so I can answer the question, okay? Also, to maintain a safe community, remember the webinar that we had, we talked about online money smarts, right? And we always talked about, we never share our personal information on KiddieNomics, right? So in the chat box, kiddies, please never share any of your personal information, like your full name or your age or anywhere you live, especially, nothing like that. Please never share that stuff in the chat box, okay? We just want to make sure that you maintain a very safe community. And also to remind everybody, each KiddieNomics webinar is recorded, right? So we post the webinar every Friday evening at I'll have it up before 8 p.m. tonight. And so you can always go back if this is your first webinar with KiddieNomics. You can go back and check out our KiddieNomics YouTube channel and see all of our past webinars that we have had, right? We've had a lot, right? Mm-hmm. We've had many webinars. So you can always go back and watch any of our past webinars to get you all caught up in KiddieNomics. And then if you want to watch this webinar back in case you've missed something, you can watch it tonight by about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I will have it up, okay? So that's it for housekeeping items. Let's get into our special guest. So Miss Jackie Brown. I love the last name. So Miss Jackie Brown is a writer, editor, and publishing coach, right? She helps people write, publish, market, and sell their books. She has a BSc in environmental science, uber smart, from the University of Toronto, and a master's degree in environmental chemistry from the University of Bedfordshire in England. The first books and reports I worked on were all scientific subjects. After working with traditional publishers and and then with a literary agency. Plus, due to my own interest in writing fiction, she expanded, and now she does all kinds of books. Her favorite part of the business is working with authors outside of work. Her favorite thing to do are writing and journaling. A lot of you guys like to journal, which is awesome. Quilting, embroidery, and crocheting. Hey, my grandma taught me how to crochet in Jamaica. I also love to watch TV shows as they are all based on stories. But her main passion is her family, and she has 2 sons and 2 daughters, and they all live in Bowmanville in Ontario, Canada, with her pets, 1 dog, 3 cats, and a hedgehog named Bug. Wow, she has a full house. So let's give a great KiddieNomics welcome to Miss Jackie Brown. She's going to talk to us today about book writing for kids today. Now, sorry, Miss Jackie, before you start, I want to remind everybody that this month is Financial Literacy Month for the month of November in Canada. So please pay special attention, because I will be giving away a prize by the end of the webinar for all the kids that are on the webinar today. So if you watch it back, sorry, but if you are on the webinar today and you answer any question, you answer my question, then I will let you know the prize that you would win. Okay, so we're gonna do.
I already know what the prize is.
You do?
I mean the question.
Yeah. Well, you don't know. You don't know what's in my brain, so you have to wait.
Of course I know what's in my brain.
Let me just see here. Just double checking before we start, Miss Jackie, if the kids have any questions. Nope, they're all telling you welcome. So let's get started. Thank you, Miss Jackie. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and it's away to you. There you go. Hi.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And I'm so very pleased and honored to be here and to be invited to speak to you today about my favorite subject, which is writing books. So today we'll talk about how to write a book, and then next week we'll talk about how to publish one. We'll talk about how to publish, market, and sell the books that you write. But first, I'm going to tell you a bit about myself. As you heard before, my name's Jackie Brown, and I run my own company. My company is called Jackie Brown Books. So I use my name in my company, which I really like. And I help people get their stories out. And that means I help them to write and complete their books. Because sometimes you start and you don't know, you're not sure how to finish it, or you get a bit stuck. And so I help people to finish them. And before I did that, I worked for several other companies. And one you might know a lot about, because it's Nelson Education. So your math books are likely from that, and your science books. If you're in grade 5 in Catholic school, you might see this one. And as you get older, you'll see this history book when you're in grade 7. And my name's in there. That's the fun thing about doing books, that your name gets published. I'm going to show you where my name is in this book. It is way up here. I don't know if you can see that. It's probably crooked too. But that's one of the beautiful things about publishing. You get your names in books. And so as you get a bit older, you're going to see my names in some of the books you use in schools. And so let me start my slideshow. And 1 second, please. And hopefully you're seeing that. It says yes. So here's our topic, how to write a book.
Perfect.
And so what we're going to cover today is how to find ideas and then test them, how to get yourself organized about your writing, how to edit your book, and how to illustrate and design your book. So how about we start with the basics? And here I'm going to ask you to use the chat a bit. I'm going to ask you a question. You might think it's really easy, but still, my question is, what is a book? What? Okay, so let me know. How, think about it. What do you think a book is?
So Mickey has an answer. The kids haven't answered yet. Go ahead.
I think a book is basically something that you can learn from and something that you can learn stories from. So basically like a list of things and history and mystery.
She loves history and mystery.
That's your favorite type of book.
Yeah.
And so I'll show you how the dictionary defines a book like this.
So hold on one second. Some of the kids have some answers.
Oh, really? Oh, good. Okay.
So, so Madeline says a book is a bunch of papers that have a story on the pages. Smart. Maya says a book is a story or informative text. That's really good.
It can also be a paragraph.
Or it can be a paragraph, right? Yep. A collection of thoughts and information from Renata. Paulette says a book is where you can learn new things. Those are all good answers.
All fabulous answers. In the dictionary, it says a book is written or printed information that's glued or sewn together in pages, and that the gluing is on one side. In this book, if you can see my cursor, it's sewn together on this side, although in the books we're familiar with, they tend to be sewn together on this side. This picture here is the oldest book by that definition that we've ever found. It's like 1,500 years old. I don't know, that's like a lot of years old, you know.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so this isn't paper. It would be made out of some kind of leather. And you can see, and even when you open it, you can hardly see what it says because they would have used a different type of pigment or ink to write in it. Whereas now, as we know, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. How do I stop that? And that's from someone from Dallas, Texas. And I know no one from Dallas, Texas. I don't have my phone beside me, but I have one of those crazy computers where everything's connected.
Yeah.
So when the phone rings, no matter where it is in the house, it rings here as well. But anyway, let's keep going. So this is an old type of book. But the other thing we know that nowadays we have a different type of book, too, don't we? You can buy books online. So a book no longer has to be a number of pages sewn together. They can be something that you purchase online and that you read on your cell phone or your mom's or your dad's cell phone, or you read it on your tablet, your iPad. You can read it on a special reader. They have some called a Kindle that are very popular. There's some others called a Kobo, but for a lot of us, we read those type of books on our iPads or cell phones. So what was considered a book before has changed quite a lot. So the most important thing within that printed book, because you wouldn't have a book if you didn't have a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and so people have told stories forever. You know, like people, like this is someone in another country. She's in Africa, and she's got all these are all boys around her, and she's telling them a story, just as your parents might tell you a story about where they're from, or they might just tell you a story about to encourage you to be good, or read you a story from a book. But the idea is that we always learn from stories, and stories were told well before that first book was ever created. And I bet there's been times that you've been told stories, whether inside a book or not. For example, Bible stories, often they're in a book, but someone would tell you them as well. So you need a story in order to have something to write down to create a book. So our first thing we wanted to cover was, how do we get ideas for stories? Sorry, before we even go there, I want to ask you a question. And again, we're going to need you to use the chat or to answer, or for your daughter to answer over there. What's your name again? I've forgotten your daughter.
Mickey.
Sorry?
Mickey.
Mickey. I was going to say Nikki because I have a little cousin called Nikki. So Nikki, you'll yell it out, but others write it down. So there are true stories and stories you make up, right? So a true story would be something like perhaps she's telling them about agriculture, how to grow the plants around her. Or you might have a story about the life cycle of a bug or something like that. What do you call a story you make up? Is it called fiction or nonfiction? The type of stories you make up, are they fiction or nonfiction?
Non-fiction.
The type of stories that you make up, is it fiction or nonfiction?
Well, if you make them up,
Then it's fiction. Mickey says fiction. And the kids, let me see what the kids say. They all say fiction. Paulette says fiction. Adonis, Coy, Maya, Madeline, all say fiction.
That's right. The type of story that you make up is called a fictional story. But the type of story which is true is called nonfiction. So I have a question now. Are any of you planning to write stories? Maybe some of you've written some already, whether you've made them in a book or not. What kind of stories are you writing or have you written? So tell me.
Go ahead.
Superwoman.
She wrote a story about Superwoman. So I guess fantasy, right? Yeah.
Story. Yeah.
Let me see what the kids say. I know that Madeline said that she's been writing for 2 years now.
Wow.
Niobe says, I've written mostly fiction stories. I've been writing stories for about 3 to 4 years. Joel says a book called Creations and Creations 2. Cool.
Wow.
That's really cool. Oh, that's Egypt. Sorry. So Egypt and Niobe, you guys are sharing the same computer today. Okay, no problem. Koi says, I've written for 2 years. That's so awesome. Look at all these kids that are writing. She says, Madeline says that she only wrote a few, but never really finished all of them. Only one. So is that part of the writing process? Like we tend to start stories, but maybe because we have so many ideas.
Yeah. Right? And that's part of the testing them. Because sometimes when you write a story and you can't maintain your interest in it, or you can't write about it long enough, that's one way that you know, this is maybe not the story from this book, and I'll come up with another one. So now we can talk about, how did you come up with your ideas? How did you come up with the ideas that you have for your stories? Nikki, how did you come up with your idea to write a Superwoman story?
Sorry, it's Mickey with the M.
I said Nikki again because that's my cousin. I apologize, Mickey.
That's okay.
Mickey.
How did you come up with your Superwoman story?
I don't really know, because really what inspired me was watching Superman.
Exactly.
It was like really my childhood, so I really like to watch Superman. So I didn't actually know. I just really wanted to make a story, and I get really mad when my mom tries to correct me because I want to do it by myself. And
you said the exact word that helps lots of people write their stories. They get inspired by something else they've read or seen. That's a common way of coming up with story ideas. How about others? What other ways did they come up with their stories?
Let me just see. So Joel says he wrote a book called My Story and Interline Troubles. Cool. I usually make fan fiction. I make she's a fanatic about cartoons online. That's so cool. That's from Madeline.
Yeah.
Koi says, I made a story called Koi, is that right? The Purge 1 and Purge 2, and also World War 3.
Sorry.
Koi. Sorry. I've heard of those stories before, Koi. Okay. Adonis says only fiction. Madeline says she's in a fiction group. That's really cool. So I guess that's a writing group.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Adonis says only fiction. And what's realistic fiction? Is that another?
Realistic fiction can be a story that's based on some true things, but it isn't entire, but you can add things to it so that it becomes a fictional story. Often people will do that if they want to keep some privacy around people that perhaps they don't want to name in their story, or if they want to embellish their story in one way or another.
Ah, okay. Thanks,
Yeah,
Corey. I
that's
learned something new.
That made me laugh so bad.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly. Okay, so here's some other ways, if we haven't mentioned these already, ways of creating ideas for your story. You might write about your day. For example, people mentioned journaling. You might keep a notebook and write about things that you notice. For example, you might be sitting at a park bench and you notice a strange dog, or you notice some people playing or something like that. You could note that down and that could become an idea for a story. Playing what if, and we'll come back to that. Or your own experiences, which I believe someone mentioned in the chat, that someone's writing about their own experiences. I think it was the first person that you mentioned that they're writing on their own experiences, which is very, very cool. So, what if is a very popular way of creating stories, because you might think of something that happens every day, but then you go, what if? And that is often a way that people come up with some very fun fictional stories. Like a lot of the stories that you've heard of, and these stories can end up as movies or as some of the cartoons you watch, they start up with what if. So like when you think of a cartoon, like I'm older, so I can think of ones like Bugs Bunny. I can't even think of more recent ones, but what if there was a cat that was friends with that was friends with a bunny? And that's what happens in the Sylvester and some of those other stories. So in this case, I want you to consider this. Like, what if you got a special note in a box of cereal, a mysterious note that suggests that you follow these instructions and take it to the Prime Minister of Canada, or the Prime Minister or President of another country if you're not living in Canada? What if that treasure could solve the whole pandemic? Imagine that and write a story about it. So you might want to write that down or think about this and do that after this. And if you're watching this recording, you could actually pause it, write your story, or jot some ideas down and come back to it. But what if is often a way that people, come up with stories. Here we are. Yeah, that is a way that people come up with stories, imagining what if in so many situations. What if my dog started to talk to me? What if this pen I picked up was like made out of gold and had magical planets? What if these beans I got from a stranger after I traded my cow and I planted them grew a big beanstalk way up into heaven? Way up into the clouds. So many great stories occur based on what if. No one would, yeah, so I'm in a meeting with you guys. And so once you got the beginning of your story and you write it down, and you write down some ideas about it, that's the beginning of you getting organized, isn't it? You'll find that many of you have been told by your teacher to get organized by creating an outline. If that hasn't happened yet, it'll happen soon. Doing an outline is a frequent way of organizing your ideas. Wait a second, and I'm going to show you one. We're going to do a little outline together. I'm going to change showing this screen to showing you a different one. New share. Oh, this is so easy to do. Oh, you can even use the whiteboard. But what I'm going to use is this page. Here we are. So think of a story. How about we were thinking about one about Superwoman. So here's our story, how you might do an outline. Superwoman. Then you think, okay, I'm going to write a story about Superman. How do I start? You might think, what are her powers? What problem will she solve? Oops, I'll put a question mark there. Who are the other characters? How will the story start? How will it end? So that's how you might begin on your journey to tell your story. And then what you do then is you write some of the things that would happen, put them in a logical order, and boom, you have your outline. What you use your outline to do is it's the path to writing your story. Often, if you don't have an outline, you're not going to finish your story. So maybe that's why some of the people who mentioned before that they didn't finish it weren't able to, because they didn't have an outline. So if you write down the type of, a summary of what's going to happen in your story, and then plot down some of the things that will happen, that's your outline, and that helps you actually get to the end. So in terms of kids' books, a book, there's some kind of rules, but even though rules are meant to be broken sometimes, generally a kid's book will be, when it's finished, around 32 pages. Here's a kid's book I worked on recently. And so you have pages with text and images, but all together, it's about 32 pages. And this book is for someone around your age, Mickey. But if you're writing for a child who's a bit younger, you might have less pages. You might have 24 pages. If you're writing for children older, you could go up to 64 pages. Adult books, as you can imagine, and as you know, can have a lot more pages. So you're going to have a lot longer outline if you're writing a book this size, aren't you? So, but still, they're done the same way. They're organized with an outline. You make sure you've got everything organized in the right way, and then you write the book. When you finish, like when this lady gave her manuscript, you know what she did when she got to the word "the end"? Celebrated. That's the first thing you do when you finish writing your book. You celebrate. You jump up and down. You tell everyone, and importantly, you leave that book alone for a while. You leave it alone for a few days. You know why? Because you're going to want to look at it again with fresh eyes. And what I mean by fresh eyes is you want to look at it like it's brand new. Because when you do that, sometimes you find some errors. And that's when we come to an important part of the book, which is editing. And that's exactly what I do. I am an editor. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that you can stop sharing for a bit. So, because that's what I am. I'm an editor. And what that means is that I help people spot some of the errors in their books and fix it so that it's perfect when they go to print it. Because you know how sometimes when you've got something in your mind and you try to write it back down, you know exactly what you mean, but the person you're talking to may not. And when you're talking to them, they can say, huh? Or what do you mean? Or sorry, can you repeat that? But in a book, they can't. So that's how an editor helps. They help you with those places where it might not be clear to your reader, so that they can help you by saying, can you fix that a bit? Or wow, that bit was excellent. I really loved that. So that is the relationship between an editor and a writer. Do you have a question, Stacey?
Yes, I do. So one of the kids would like to know, let me just scroll back, they were talking. Paulette would like to know, how do you make the pictures?
We're coming to that. So first, before you even start the pictures, you want to make sure that your story is completed, that you've edited it, and that you've got it down as the best version that you have. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. Egypt says that her sister, who's Niobe, is her editor, which is awesome. So let's talk about, who do you get to edit your books before you get into how do you do the pictures? How do you get to edit your books?
I think,
or your stories, sorry, before it turns into a book.
Yeah, I think that was an excellent idea to have your sibling read it, or it could be a friend, it could be a parent, it could be your teacher. And in some cases, it would be a professional editor like me. And having a job as an editor is like so fun. It's especially great for someone who loves reading and loves writing like I do. I feel like I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get paid to read books. So you choose your editor, someone in your family, your teacher, or when when you're older or you're doing a professional book, it'll be someone like me. And then what happens with editing is they'll say, you should fix here or that. Sometimes you'll rewrite bits of it. And then you'll say, wow, this book is now the best version of my story ever. And it's at that point, you want to bring in an illustrator. So for some people, they might illustrate it themselves, but often it's a different person who does the illustrations. Like in this book, Julie Thompson, she did the writing, and another person, Daria, she did the illustrating. But in your case, or in other cases, you have the same person who's a writer who can also illustrate. What a great ability it is to have an ability to do both of those, but it's rare. How about you guys? Are you illustrating your own books?
So a couple of the kids, let me just go back. Paulette says, my mom edits my dad's books, which is awesome. So I guess your dad's a writer. That's amazing. Coy says he's not a good drawer, but he does edit his own books. Awesome. Right. Let me see. Paulette wants to know, do you like to read, Miss Brown? She says.
Yes, it's my favorite things to do. And I'm going to come to that about a way of making yourself the even better writer.
Oh, yeah. And then Egypt says she mostly uses apps like, is that Gacha? Gacha Life? Gacha Life?
Gacha,
so
Gacha Life. Gacha.
I think
Gacha
it's supposed
Life.
to be Gacha.
It's
Gacha Life. So it's animated.
It's like a tiny anime.
Gotcha. Okay.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay. So it looks like a couple of kids also use that same app. That's awesome. Look at you guys.
I call it Gucha.
Gucha.
All right. I'm thinking it's a wee bit dark. I'm going to ask Lola, could you turn on the light for me? Then you'll see me a bit better. But yeah, there's lots of ways that help you to both look at the words correctly. Even when you do it, if you write it down in a word processor, sometimes if there's an error, it puts a squiggly line under. That helps with editing as well. And so before we go to the next topic, which is illustrating your book, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Actually, I'm going to ask you one question and you tell me which you think is the best way to improve your ability to write stories. 1, take lots of courses in writing. 2, practice by writing a lot of stories. 3, read a lot of books. Or 4, all of the above. Which ways do you think will improve your ability to write stories?
Mickey says 4.
Says 4. Any other answers?
The kids say, let me just see. Adonis says 4. Paulette says 1. Adonis says 4. Joel says 4. Madeline, I think, missed the question. Egypt says all of the above. Teresa says 4. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. I'm really sorry. And then, so Madeline and Maya would like you to repeat that question, please.
Okay, the question is, what is the best way to make yourself a better writer? 1, take courses on writing. 2, practice writing by writing a lot of stories. 3, read a lot of books that other people have written. Or 4, all of the above. So I'll tell you the answer.
So Gabriel says going with the majority. And then Madeline says, smart.
Smart guy.
Yeah, Madeline says 3, Coy says 4, Maya now says 4. Mickey said 4. I go with 4 too.
Yes, all of the above are great ways to improve your ability to write. And you'd be surprised, but the best way to improve your ability to write is to read a lot of books. Reading helps you write because just like Mickey said, you get inspiration. And you'll find out from when you're looking at other books, how they describe the sky or how they described a person. And it will help you when you're doing the same in your book. But of course, taking writing courses is great. Being part of a writing group, like someone mentioned, practicing writing, by writing lots of stories, the more you write, the better you'll be. Reading books, that is one of the best ways of improving your ability to write. And so, I was going to read all of the above again, but No, it's those three things. So do whichever you love the most, the most. Myself, like someone asked, I read a lot of books. And so I encourage you, because I think my job's the best in the world, become an editor. So now we'll go to illustrating your book. And so, yes, once your story is written, that's when you illustrate it, because you'll want to figure out where you want to put the words. Like you want to put some words here, some on another page, some on another page. And you do that whether you're writing a book like this, because again, this is like your textbooks. This takes a lot of organization, the books you use in school. And so there, also you illustrate both with pictures as well as with photographs. Photographs are also illustrating. So you can you can be an actor in your book. You can act it out, wear costumes, and take photographs and illustrate your books in that way. Or of course, you can draw. This is a magazine I do called Outfox, and in it has both some photographs, like in most magazines, as well as, let me see if I can find the illustrations, you know, some illustrations here, and yeah, and lots of photographs, of course. So that is how you illustrate and organize your book. You usually have a designer come in, because often illustrators aren't sure how to make it look like a book. And so that is one of the final parts of it, getting a designer who helps by choosing the type of fonts. The font is the type of typography, as well as putting the images in there. And then they use all the technology to create it so that you can either make it a digital book or you can make it a print book. So to sum up what we talked about today, to write and illustrate your book, you get an idea, and there's lots of ways to get ideas. You test it by writing an outline to make sure that you have enough material to actually create a book, and your book would be shorter if it's for younger people and longer if it's for older people. And then once you write the book, you leave it so you can come back to it with fresh eyes. Then you might fix things up. Then you'll have an editor look at it, whether it's your sibling or your parent or a teacher or a professional like I am. Once the story is approved, you get it illustrated, then you get it designed, so you have that file which creates the book. And next week, we'll talk about how to take that file and publish it, and how you would sell and market that book.
Awesome. So we have a few questions, Miss Jackie. One, sorry, how do we find an illustrator? Like, how do you, like, if you're not a kid that is great at drawing, you're great at writing out your stories. So how do we go about finding an illustrator?
Yeah, that can sometimes be difficult, you know, because I work with a number of adults who are writing books, and that's been one of the trickiest parts. So for you guys, it could be that a friend of yours is a great illustrator, or you might decide to use photographs instead. And there's some technology that can make photographs look just like they're drawn. The other way you can get illustration is through the computer. You can buy pictures through stock photography. And I'm going to talk a bit about that next week. I'll bring that up, that you can actually buy images. And they're not that expensive, so your parents won't go crazy when you say, I need to buy a picture of this and that. I can, you know, in the next version, I'll tell you a bit about that bit. But one of the better ways, take a photograph and then use the technology, you know, even on a cell phone, you know, you can make it look like a drawn image, or use photographs, because sometimes that's easier to do than illustrating. Or ask your friend that you know can draw.
Awesome. We have a question from Paulette. She wants to know, how do you find the right title? That's always a hard one, right? To sum it all up and put the great title on a book. How do you find the right title?
That can be a difficult thing, because a title, you can often find a way to summarize it. So for example, with Mickey's idea, she could call the book The Name of the Superwoman. So if the Superwoman was called Mickey the Strong, then that could be the name of her book, because often books are named after the main character, or they're named after something the main character does. So for perhaps in, again, Mickey's story, what if it was Mickey Saves the World? Or if you wrote that what if story, it could be something about like something that's kind of mystical, secrets in cereal, you know? So there's often ways to find a book title. One, the name of the main character, something the main character achieves, or something mysterious that happens within the book. Those are some ways.
That's a really good tip. Let me just see. Koi says, what did you say here, Koi? You said you like making books more than reading books.
So when you're improving yourself,
you're super creative.
Yeah.
There, well, I knew it. Okay, hold on one second. Right click. Can I give you
Al?
Okay. Remember, kids, please don't share any personal information on the chat, okay? Okay, sorry. So Koi says he once made a book and made copies of it and gave it out for $1. Look at his enterprise, right? That's awesome.
Publishing. And yeah, that's fantastic, Koi.
That is super awesome. Let me see. Do you guys have any more questions? I have a question. If I look in many gifts textbooks, will I see your name? Will I look in, oh, sorry, Maya, can you type that one again? Her question is, if I look in many gifts textbook, will I see your name?
You definitely will. You'll see it right on this page. Where's my name here? I even, one of my kids circled my name, but yes, you'll see it right in here. So yes, I did. And when you're in grade 12 and you're studying chemistry, you'll see my book and my name in another book. But that's the fun thing, to see your name there. And as an editor, often the authors will say in their acknowledgement page, they'll say, thank you to my editor, Jackie Brown. And that makes me very proud as well.
Maya says, thank you. She says, I'm going to use that textbook.
Wonderful.
That's amazing. Okay, is there any more questions for Miss Jackie, kids? Just type it in the chat. How did you start to become an editor? That is from Paulette.
Wow. I started to become an editor because in my way was in a kind of a roundabout way, because my education was in the sciences and I used to work, but I also loved reading. So even within my other job, I was also explaining difficult scientific concepts in a way that made it easier. For example, like I did in some of the textbooks I've worked on. So it kind of, I was able to merge the two things I loved. I love reading and I love science. So I was very lucky to be able to find a job that merged them both. And that's how I became involved in publishing. And next week, I'll tell you a bit more about how because that was all nonfiction, as you know, but I also work a lot with fiction. And next week when we talk, I'll tell you how I got involved with fiction work.
Awesome. Maya says she used that textbook today in school.
Ooh, now you know the person who organized it all.
See, it's a small world. That's fantastic. Yeah. All right. Any more questions? You guys are still talking about Captain Underpants, so that's cool.
Love those books.
The Captain Underpants books. Yeah.
I don't know if many of you know the story about that author, but when he was little, he used to draw on everything. And he had a teacher who wasn't very nice and who said, oh, you're never paying attention. You're never going to amount to anything. And so he dedicated his book to that teacher.
Oh, see?
Sometimes if you have a dream and others don't believe in it, they may try to discourage you. But he, like many others, stayed on his path and did the job that was his dream. So always remember, and I hope that makes you enjoy Captain Underpants even more.
Even more. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Miss Jackie Brown. We're going to wrap up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So Miss Jackie will be back next week in our part 2 of helping you guys start your own enterprises, which is starting to write your books, right? And publish them So once you do that, then you will start generating your own income from your books, which is phenomenal. All the kids, stop copying me. Which is phenomenal. and you guys will become kiddipreneurs. So that is fantastic. So you're going to see Miss Jackie next week, but I will wrap up. So I'm going to share back my screen. Here we go. So last question that I always ask as usual, what would happen if kids became more financially literate? And the answer is?
Real change that impacts the world.
Real change that impacts the world. Because we believe that financial literacy, the more that you become financially literate, the more that you will be able to make more educated, informed, and good choices as you get older. So that finances won't be something that holds you back. You can do anything that you want to be. And if it's something that is awesome that you're gonna, help save the world or come up with a fabulous idea with a new invention, you can do all of that. Like this little one here, stop it. Are we being silly today? All right. So we just want to make sure that finances is just something that's not going to hold you back in whatever it is that you want to be, for you guys to be the amazing yous that you guys are, right? Okay. Before we get into our schedule though, for our upcoming weeks, let's give away a prize. All right, I'm going to make the first question of our month of financial literacy really simple. And the first person, so let me just put it in. Let me just make sure that my chat box is open so I can see. So the first person that tells me, if you write a story that is not based on truth, what is it called?
Fiction.
The first person that writes it. All right, Koi, you're the first person. Good job. I'm going to send your prize. Yeah, Koi said fiction. Good job. But he was the first. You don't count.
I said fiction.
I know, but you don't count. All right, I'll give you a prize. Mickey will get a prize. Koi, you'll get my prize though. Congratulations, Koi. I will send you your prize in the mail. I will send you an email so that we can work out how I'm going to mail it to you, okay? All right, awesome. Good job. You guys, everybody else, you guys got into it. Egypt said fiction, Paulette said fiction, Adonis says fiction. Joel says it's called nonfiction, which is not right. So Egypt wants to know, are there prizes all November for Financial Literacy Month? Yeah. So for the next 4 webinars, we will have a prize that we're going to give away all month, right? So that will be fun. So this was our first prize and I made it super simple, but I think next week I'm going to make it harder for you guys. Okay. So I'm going to think of a harder question for you guys. All right. So Koi, I will email you later and I will arrange for your delivery. Okay. All right. Coming up for the upcoming weeks for KiddieNomics. Stop now. I'm serious. Stop. Okay. Miss Jackie Brown will be back next week in part 2 on how to publish your book, right? So this week was about how to create the book, how to get ideas, how to get the illustrator, how to find an editor. You're going to do all of that. And then next week, that we bring the book together, we're going to talk about how to publish that book, right? And get it out there in the world of the different platforms that you can use to publish your book, okay? So that's going to be next week, Friday, November 13th. And then after that, we're going to have Miss April Mullings back on KiddieNomics, which is going to be super fun. Miss April Mullings has been on KiddieNomics a few months ago. She talked about budgeting for kids, taxes for kids, and assets versus liabilities for kids. So if you want to go back and watch our previous webinars. Those are really, really awesome. So this next week, or Friday, November 20th, we're going to talk about first paycheck for kids. This one is going to be fun because I remember when I got my first paycheck as a kid and I was like, what happened to all my money? So it's a good learning lesson. So you understand what happens with your paycheck, okay? And then after that, to wrap up the month, Friday, November 27th, it will be financial planning for kids. So we all need to have a plan as to what we want to accomplish and how we're going to handle our money and what does that look like. So we're going to do financial planning with you guys. That's a big topic. Most adults don't even do it. So for you guys to do it, that's going to be phenomenal. And then our last KiddieNomics for 2020, right, is going to be Friday, December 4th. And we're going to wrap it up with Ryan Knight, and we're going to talk about grants for kids. So that's going to be super fun. So sometimes when you want to start your own business or your own enterprise and you may not have all the finances to start it, there are grants out there that will give you money to start your business. So we're going to talk about grants, okay? And how to write grants and all of that for kids. So that's going to be the last one of 2020. And then we will be back in January 2021. Can you believe it's already almost the end of the year? So we will be back in January 2021. Our first one back will be January 8th. And Maya, we're going to be talking about stocks. So we're going to have Mr. Tim Nash, and we're going to talk about good investing, okay? So that's going to be fun. We're going to wrap up the year, but we'll be back in January 8th, and that's not on here yet, but I'll put it up in the next few weeks, okay? All right. Last of it is, of course, we always want to hear from you. Our goal is to help create tiny financial literacy ambassadors around the globe, because guess what? There are kids that watch KiddieNomics from all over the world, and we are super happy to have you on. So we want to hear from you. We want to know what do you want to learn about? Tell me. I know a few of you have emailed me before, and I've tried to, tell you there's upcoming topics coming up, or I'm going to book a guest on that will cover your topics. So don't worry. But I always want to hear from you. So tell me what you guys think, okay? You can always contact me at kiddienomics101@gmail.com. And then, of course, you can please like and follow us on
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Okay.
All right. So you can use the hashtag KiddieNomics or Ask KiddieNomics so that we know when you guys are tagging us on things. But of course, a friendly reminder, as I said, this webinar is absolutely recorded. So this will be up. You can watch this webinar by 8 o'clock tonight. It will be up. And of course, all of our previous webinars are posted on our YouTube channel. So we want you guys to have a good week. Koi, congratulations for winning our prize. I will show you the prize next week, and we will get it mailed out to you. And everybody else, we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Miss Jackie Brown. You did amazing. And we'll see you everybody next week, right? Yeah. And bye.